You did some time in the cat jail for less time. You didn't like the way your tan was in the morning.
Excuse me, is this thing on?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
You're welcome.
Guitar up.
1,
Turn
2,
that guitar
3.
up.
Hi, and welcome to In the Studio. I'm Redbeard, bringing you the stories behind the greatest rock and roll albums in history. Today, we'll go in the studio with a rock and roll whiz kid, a studio wizard who created a classic album practically all by himself.
Till I saw the light in your eyes.
I always considered myself an album artist, that my concepts essentially were album-oriented. And by the time I got to Something Anything, it was all of the concepts, I suppose, were I'm a songwriter.
Hello, it's me.
Hi, this is Todd Rundgren in the studio for Something Anything.
Something Anything, Todd Rundgren's third solo album, would have been an incredible achievement under any circumstances. Released in 1972, it was an amazingly diverse collection of music, incorporating a dazzling array of pop music influences. There are 24 songs on this album, all of them written by Todd Rundgren, and they include everything from sweet soul ballads to hard-rocking guitar showcases. They are deceptively simple pop songs, and some boldly ambitious studio experiments, too. What makes the achievement even more impressive is that on 3 of the 4 album sides, every note of every instrument, every drum beat, every guitar lick, every background vocal was written, arranged, and performed by Todd Rundgren, and he was, at the time, 23 years old. Something Anything was Rundgren's first gold album, and it contained his biggest hit, a song called Hello, It's Me, which he'd originally written and recorded 4 years earlier when he was in a band called The Nazz. Hello, It's Me made it to number 5 on the singles charts in 1973, and as Todd explains, it came from one side of Something Anything on which he did use other musicians.
I had never expected it to be released as a single because it was done as part of these like haphazard extemporaneous live sessions that we did in the studio, and that was all part of just the general concept. Since it turned out to be a double album, what originally started out as a single album, and I was just going to do all the instruments myself, I just wound up with too many songs, and then I figured, well, I'm tired of doing them all myself. I don't want to do a whole double album all myself, so I'll do a side of it that's just like live, the complete opposite of all this overdubbing, and do it all with no overdubs, and that's essentially what we did.
Hello, it's me. I've thought about us for a long, long time. Maybe I think too much, but something's wrong. There's something here that doesn't last too long. Maybe I shouldn't think of you as mine. Seeing you, or seeing anything as much as I do you, I take for granted that you're always there. I take for granted that you just don't care. Sometimes I can't help seeing all the way through. It's important to me that you know you are free. 'Cause I never want to make you change for me. and spend the night if you think I should.
It's important to me that you know you are free.
'Cause I'd never wanna make you change for me. Think of me, you know that I'd be with you if I could. Come around to see you once in a while, or if I ever need a reason to smile, and spend the night if you think I should.
Hello, It's Me, which a lot of people think is my only record, was done in 2 hours. You know, it was just like really just whipped off. And there were no charts written out. The horn players just kind of like, we went through the song a couple times, and the horn players just kind of like scribble out some stuff, you know. And by the time they got to the end, you know, this part that's happening at the end where they're doing all this, they were ad-libbing that completely off the top of their heads. You know, one guy would start doing it, and the other guys would just start following him. All I did was say, okay, here's generally the tempo that I want, here's the changes. Everybody else figured out their own part.
By the time Something Anything was released, Todd Rundgren was already being hailed by some critics as a young musical genius. He seemed a rare combination of talents, able to write charming pop song lyrics, blessed with a gift for learning new instruments and musical techniques almost on the spot, and equally adept at understanding and utilizing all the technical intricacies of a modern recording studio. Some people behind his back called him a brat, but no one doubted the depth of his talent.
Some people have particular talents, you know, like if you become a graphic artist, you have a ability to remember what things look like, or, you know, to conjure up visualizations of things that you want to draw or paint. And I have always had sort of a photographic memory when it comes to music. If I'm paying attention, I can hear something once and pretty much remember most of it. Not necessarily lyrics, you know, lyrics are, you know, another category of symbology, but as far as melodies, musical constructions, things like that, always been very easy for me to absorb and remember them. What happened in the long run is I never learned how to write music, read or write music. I don't to this day. No, I just did it all by ear. It was easier. You know, just listen to it enough times and figure out where the notes are and just play it. So that's what my eventual technique became.
Todd Rundgren grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs and began playing guitar in high school. After playing in blues rock bands around Philly, he formed the Nazz in 1967. The Nazz recorded 3 albums, which in retrospect, critics have greatly praised. But at the time, their British-influenced pop style didn't catch on. And in 1969, Rundgren left the band.
Ultimately, we were overmanaged and we fought all the time, you know, and eventually, you know, like it was only like 18 months, but from the birth of the band till the time I left the band, long enough for us to record 2 albums. You know, we had recorded our first album within 6 months of the band being together. We got like discovered and then like phenomenized, signed and recorded our album, and then that was probably within 9 months, and then within another 9 months we recorded the second album, and by the time we finished the second album, I'd quit the band. And the second album was a double album, so they only put out one record of it and had another records left over. And what was happening was I was starting to evolve as a songwriter, and the rest of the band didn't really, wasn't participating. So we fought about it, and then eventually I quit.
It's true, yes, it's true. I'm as guilty of the sin as you. I lived through it too. As you can see, it didn't hurt me. You must admit you helped a bit. Though I wasn't alone. I remember it still. Drink a toast if you will. This is for the girls who just couldn't see that my only sin was being me. And this one's for the girls and they know who they are. It's so long ago, and I don't know. Now I don't recall all the details of the scene at all, but I had a ball and learned all the games, forgot all the names. You must admit you learned a bit. No, I wasn't alone. It takes two to tango. I remember it still. It takes two to tango. Drink a toast if you will. This is for the girls who couldn't understand what it's like to try to be a man. And this one's for the girls and they know who they are. It's so long ago, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't claim to know at all who was right and who was wrong. I just don't remember all the things that were said. What went on in my head? But it's easy to see that I use you and you use me. This is for the girls who think I've done wrong. Could you really hold a grudge that long? And this one's for the girls and they know who they are. It's so long ago, and I don't know.
That's It Takes Two to Tango. Rundgren had begun to acquire production skills during his days with the Nas, and after he left the band, he decided to learn all he could about production and engineering techniques. He had also decided that if he were to record again, he'd be better off doing it by himself, without the restrictions of having to explain what he wanted to a producer or other musicians.
Well, at the time, the thing I thought I learned was I don't want to have a band. You know, I don't have anything to do with a band. But I also learned that the record business is generally a lot sleazier than most people are aware of, and that I didn't really want to be involved in it as an artist. Being an artist seemed to like put you at the mercy of the most number of sleazeballs. So I decided I wanted to be a record producer instead, in which case I could, say I could confine myself to a certain area of the process. I guess I'm involved in the record making part of it, but I'm not involved in promotion or any of the celebrity part of it. So that's what I did initially. I decided that I just wanted to produce records, and after producing records for a while, I started to get itchy and had some musical ideas I wanted to experiment with, so I made my first solo album. But it wasn't at the time with the intention of like parlaying it into a big musical career. I just wanted to have my own little niche and make records, have people sort of like leave me alone just to make records.
The songs Rundgren wrote for his early solo albums were heavily influenced by both British pop and American soul. That soulfulness is particularly evident on a song from Something Anything called It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference.
You don't have to be stylistically influenced by R&B to be, quote, soulful. The quality of so-called soulfulness has to do with the degree of honesty that you reveal your feelings and your true thoughts. And there's a lot of music that takes the form of doing that without actually doing it, by using the use of cloying lyrics, but the idea is to really reflect what you actually feel about something, to be motivated to do this, not because it's stylistically relevant or because it's time to do an album. It's because you really have something you want to say.
I'd rather think of dying instead. And maybe you remember the last time you called me to say we were through. How it took a million tears just to prove they all were for you. But those days are through, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me when it wouldn't really make any difference if you really loved me? You just didn't love me, 'cause I know of hundreds of times I could be in the most unfaithful arms, that you always picture me. And maybe you remember that though I can't always show proof I was true, no one else could change my mind or stop me coming home to you. But those days are through, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me when it wouldn't really make any difference if you really loved me? You just didn't love me enough to believe me, enough to believe me, enough not to leave me, not to leave me, enough not to look for a reason to be unhappy with me and make me regret ever wanting you. But those days are through, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me when it wouldn't really make any difference if you really loved me? You just did not love me, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me when it wouldn't really make
That's It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference from Todd Rundgren, Something, Anything. Next, we'll hear exactly how Todd went about the business of recording an album with no other musicians to help him. I'm Redbeard, and you're in the studio for Something, Anything.
No, let's take my limo. Hey, let's take my limo. Why don't we just take my limo?
Keep this phrase handy for the AT&T It Can Happen to Me sweepstakes. Hip trip number 3, 3 rock weekends anywhere in the continental U.S. You choose the concerts and we'll fly you there. Crash at Plush Digs, partake of room service. We'll pick up the tab. 3 separate weekend trips, 9 days in all. Just bring your coolest friend and the appropriate attitude.
Of course we have a backstage pass.
We'll even throw in a year's worth of AT&T long distance service because you're going to have a lot of stories to tell. So start practicing your lines.
Please, no more pictures. Hello, room service? I'm with the band.
Because your days of keeping a low profile are over. For details and entry forms, see issues of Us, Rolling Stone, and Entertainment Weekly on sale February 17th. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, must be 18 years or older to enter. Entry deadline is March 31st, 1992. Hey, with AT&T, it's easy to be well connected. Only for you, only from us. AT&T.
The human body is a delicate instrument.
which means that if you've got a stuffy nose, a sore throat, or a hacking cough, you feel as awful as you sound. There's one place to go. The Halls of Medicine. Hall's Vapor Action Formula makes your stuffy nose feel clearer, soothes your sore throat, and smooths out your hacking cough. Hall's Mentholyptus tablets. Real medicine to make you feel better and sound better fast. Use only as directed.
Open wide and say ah. That throat needs Cepacol lozenges. Next, open wide and say ah. You need Cepastat lozenges. Next, say ah. Try Cepacol. Next, definitely Cepastat. Sore throats need Cepacol lozenges. Really, really sore throats need Cepastat lozenges. Use only as directed.
Welcome back to In the Studio, this week focusing on Todd Rundgren's Something, Anything. I'm Redbeard. For a while, Todd Rundgren concentrated more on being a producer and an engineer than he did on performing his own music. In 1969, he hooked up with Albert Grossman, who managed Bob Dylan and the band, and worked on several albums at Grossman's Bearsville Studios, including the band's Stage Fright album. In 1970, Todd released his first solo album called Runt. I asked him why Albert Grossman and Bearsville gave him a shot at a solo career.
They were sort of pleased with the work that I had done as a producer and engineer, and I had been an artist, so they kind of, as an indulgence, said, "Well, give him a budget. We'll see what he does." Since I had like just a drummer and a bass player, and I was doing everything else myself, the musician costs were real low. In fact, they didn't pay me anything necessarily as a musician. They paid for the album and paid for me to go to LA to record it, and allowed me to buy a few instruments and rent instruments that I wanted, things like that. And I actually did have a few people, aside from that, play on particular cuts. I hired some string and horn players for a few things. And they bankrolled it all, and then when I brought it in, they were really just kind of like, whoa, we never expected this.
It's Couldn't I Just Tell You from Something Anything. As on most of the album's other songs, Todd played all the instruments himself on that one. I asked him how he did that.
Drums are always difficult, particularly on that album. The biggest ordeal about it was playing drums. At first, I wasn't exactly sure how to do it because I had tried doing it on a couple other cuts, and it didn't work out for me to do like the keyboard, let's say a keyboard part, and have to play along to it. You know, like do keyboard part with a little drum machine and play along to it. I would always get off. So eventually, I got to develop the technique of playing the drums first without anything else on there. So the most difficult thing about any of the songs was remembering where I was in the song. You know, so I'd have to sort of like sing along, and if I would get lost in the song or lose count, then I would completely screw it up. And in some cases, it became almost extemporaneous. You know, like some parts of the song, if I would screw up, then I would rewrite the song afterwards, you know, to fit the mistake that I had made, you know, because it was easier than going back to try and fix it. You have an advantage in being, you know, in playing every instrument, is that you can make the whole of it sound sometimes very coherent, more coherent than even if you have more competent musicians who don't understand the song to the depth that the person who's written it does. So it gets back to that same thing, you know, the idea of, you know, Paul McCartney or Jeff Lynne or anyone who plays all the instruments on the record. Greatest advantage that you have is you know exactly what every other player is doing because they're all you.
Todd Rundgren recorded most of the songs for Something Anything in Los Angeles, except for side 4 of the album, which was done in New York. The New York sessions featured other musicians, and the songs were recorded live in the studio with absolutely no overdubs. But at the L.A. sessions, Todd worked alone, sometimes in a studio and sometimes in his house.
I started getting into this sort of songwriting formula where I could develop a fragmentary idea into a song in a relatively short amount of time. So when I started recording the album, I started getting more songs all the time. And the routine, and it didn't really go over a long period of time, although it was a variety of studios. The basic principal part of the recording was done at the studio that I've been using in LA for a long time. What I would do is go to the studio about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would work by myself all day long on a track playing drums or pianos or something, various overdubs, singing. Then I would come home and I had an 8-track machine in the house, and then I would record at night as well on other songs, you know. So I slept between the time, you know, I might work until 3, 4 in the morning, and then go to sleep and get up and go to the studio. Come home from the studio, eat dinner, and then go to work on this other thing. It was all I did. It was great. I loved it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
I believe if I was all alone, I would be better off in a world my own. I'd forget I ever knew of you, and this dream every night that you pulled me through. We walk along a Hollywood sea, and you dance once again with me. no peace for me. There can be no rest. I believe, though I tried my best, I'm condemned, it seems, to a life of restlessness and hopeless dreams. We are close, we are friends, and our love never ends. But in the cold morning light, I see that you won't be there
That's Cold Morning Light from Something Anything. One of the great things about the album are the liner notes, Todd's written commentary on the songs, and the recording sessions. For instance, the note for Black Mariah reads, quote, "I wish I knew what this song is about. I could swear I've heard it before."
Sometimes these, things that you write seem so familiar that you can't recall whether you've actually written it yourself or whether you heard it a long time ago and don't remember where it came from, and then just like stole it. But nobody's ever sued me over it, so I guess I thought it up myself. Or else they never heard my version of the song of theirs that I stole.
Black Mariah is a song which proves that if Todd Rundgren had chosen to be a guitar hero, he certainly could have done so. But, he says, a reputation as a guitar slinger never appealed to him.
There's this silly other world, of people who are not necessarily people who play, but the people who listen to them, who hold out technique as being everything. And even in the case of that song, there's no extraordinary technique involved in any of it. There's no extraordinary technique involved in most of my guitar playing. It's really a question of again, trying to integrate what you're doing into the musical entity as a whole. In some cases, it can have a lot of impact if you're technically hobbled because you slow down enough for people to comprehend what you're playing, and it has a greater impact, depending on what you're doing. So if I'd been dependent totally on technique, on speed, my ability to hit notes, I would probably have played so fast that it wouldn't have had the impact that it did.
like Mariah. You scare me so. I feel as though my heart's stopped.
That's Black Mariah from the side of Something Anything where, according to the liner notes, quote, "The Kid gets heavy." When we come back, we'll hear a different song from The Kid, one where he saw the light. I'm Redbeard, and you're in the studio for Todd Rundgren's Something Anything.
To explain the difference between Cepacol lozenges for sore throats and Cepastat for really sore throats, we've enlisted the help of some experts in pain. So if your throat feels like this, use Cepacol lozenges. If it feels like this, Cepastat lozenges. Like this, Cepacol. Like this, Cepastat. Sore throats need Cepacol lozenges. Really, really sore throats need Cepastat lozenges. Use only as directed.
Come on, Bobby's learning nuclear engineering.
Yeah, he joined the Navy.
But he just graduated from high school.
I know, but the Navy's looking for sharp people, and Bobby qualified.
You're in it to win it, so it's full speed ahead.
Join today's Navy. High-tech training on some of the most advanced equipment in the world for those who qualify. Talk to your Navy recruiter today.
You and the Navy, full speed ahead.
Paid for by the U.S. Navy.
I feel like I have a mask on and I want to rip it off.
It's like a fist at the top of my nose.
My sinus pain lasts all day long.
I want to take the top of my head off and get it all out.
Try Drixoral Sinus, the only sinus medicine that takes sinus pain away right away and keeps it away for up to 12 full hours. And for 12 hours, Drixoral Sinus relieves the pressure and congestion that causes the pain.
The people who make Drixoral Sinus really understand sinus pain.
Drixoral Sinus, use only as directed.
The human body is a delicate instrument, which means that if you've got a stuffy nose, a sore throat, or a hacking cough, you feel as awful as you sound. There's one place to go. The Halls of Medicine. Hall's Vapor Action Formula makes your stuffy nose feel clearer, soothes your sore throat, and smooths out your hacking cough. Hall's Mentholyptus Tablets. Real medicine to make you feel better and sound better fast. Use only as directed.
Welcome back in the studio. I'm Todd Rundgren with Redbeard.
Thanks, Todd. Although Something Anything was certainly a technical masterpiece, it also contained warm and funny peeks at the recording process. The album is sprinkled with outtakes from the sessions, little narratives from Todd. For example,
before we go any further, I'd like to show you all a game I made up. This game is called Sounds of the Studio, and it can be played with any record, including this one. You can play it you can even play with your favorite record. You may be surprised. Now, if you have a pair of headphones, you better get them out and get them cranked up, because they're really going to help you on this one.
Weren't you there when the carousel burnt down? The fire and confusion, the smoke and the sound. I swear you were there when the carousel burnt down. We were all around. The rings charred and tarnished all over the ground, and the heads hung down, and we all left town the next day. The children all cried when the carousel went down. The only side and the carousel went down. The rest of us lied as the carousel went down, and the flames did fly. The pipes steamed and shrieked out a blazing goodbye as the border died, and they melted down the midway, and we all left town the next day, and we all
Todd Rundgren called The Night the Carousel Burnt Down his first movie score, except, of course, there was no movie to go with it. However, the song is a perfect example of the studio experiments he attempted on Something Anything.
In time to the music, I would spin the speaker around so that you would get the impression of the music sort of rotating, and had 4 tracks, so it would have to start with the speaker in a different position each time and make a full rotation in, you know, sort of a musically relevant way. So there was actually it would be like being on the carousel, and, you know, and each side of the, you know, of like the center part of the carousel had part of the instrumentation on it. And it would, you know, you would be spinning, you know, you would actually be like riding on the carousel. Not only just the way the song was written, but the whole way that it was built sonically had to do with, you know, literal sense around or something, you know. So if you listen to it with headphones, it's actually like riding around on a carousel. These things go by, each of, you know, like the 4 sides of the instrumentation on the carousel, like the glockenspiels, you know, on one side, you know, an organ is on part of it, you know, and they all go spinning around. It was really a curious effect.
The first track on Something Anything, the beginning of the side that Todd called a, quote, bouquet of ear-catching melodies, was I Saw the Light. In the liner notes, Todd wrote, quote, if there's a single on this album, this is it. So I put it first, like at Motown.
That was sort of a joke, too, because I never expect to have hit singles. I've never considered myself a singles artist. I grew up in a time when, you know, the album became the form, the preeminent form. I guess ever since Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album with no singles on it. I always considered myself an album artist, that my concepts essentially were album-oriented. And by the time I got to Something Anything, it was all of the concepts, I suppose, were I'm a songwriter. You know, I am a songwriter. I'm not so much a performer as a songwriter, and I will try and get the performance together as much as possible. And then after Something Anything, I started to analyze this, you know, my own attitudes about it. I don't think I had really thought about it consciously, that I was an album artist as opposed to a singles artist. But after Something Anything, I realized that I had done kind of like the penultimate hybrid by doing all of these 3-minute songs, these really short, poppy songs.
It's been 2 decades since the release of Something Anything, years that have seen Todd Rundgren emerge as a pioneer in rock video and the use of computer animation, years in which his band Utopia developed a loyal cult following. His music continues to be as diverse as it is compelling. A critic once called Todd Rundgren, quote, a hopeless romantic surfing in a sea of space-age technology, which, when you think about it, seems to fit.
I'm sorry, fans.
But your
I
guitar
balked
player's
for a moment,
sleeping.
but I'll go all night if you want me to. Go all night. Just throw money. Throw money. Ready? I decided right now I'm changing the name of the album to Throw Money. Okay? A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3.
Last night, I was feeling something wasn't right. There was not another soul in sight. Only you, only you. So we walked alone, though I knew that there was something
We'll be back in the studio after this.
No, let's take my limo. Hey, let's take my limo. Why don't we just take my limo?
Keep this phrase handy for the AT&T It Can Happen to Me sweepstakes. Hip trip number 3, 3 day rock weekends anywhere in the continental U.S. You choose the concerts and we'll fly you there. Crash at plush digs, partake of room service, we'll pick up the tab. 3 separate weekend trips, 9 days in all. Just bring your coolest friend and the appropriate attitude.
Of course we have a backstage pass.
We'll even throw in a year's worth of AT&T long-distance service because you're going to have a lot of stories to tell. So start practicing your lines.
Please, no more pictures. Hello, room service? I'm with the band.
Because your days of keeping a low profile are over. For details and entry forms, see issues of Us, Rolling Stone, and Entertainment Weekly on sale February 17th. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, must be 18 years or older to enter. Entry deadline is March 31st, 1992. Hey, with AT&T, it's easy to be well connected. Only for you, only from us, AT&T.
So you have a sore throat.
Oh!
What you need is Cepacol lozenges. But for a really sore throat, you need Cepastat lozenges. Ordinary sore throat? Cepacol. Really sore throat? Cepastat. Cepacol? Cepastat. Sore throats need Cepacol lozenges. Really sore throats need Cepastat lozenges. Use only as directed.
Come on, your brother's getting $25,000 for college.
Yeah, he qualified for the Navy College Fund.
$25,000 for college. Your brother?
My brother.
You're in it to win it, so it's full speed ahead.
Find out how the Navy College Fund and Montgomery GI Bill can help you earn $25,000 for college. Talk to your Navy recruiter today.
You and the Navy, full speed ahead.
Paid for by the U.S. Navy.
This is Redbeard, thanking Todd Rundgren for marking the 20th anniversary of the remarkable album, Something Anything. We'd also like to especially thank Eric Gardner of Panacea Management and Todd's personal assistant, Michelle Gray. In the Studio is a Bullet production, produced by yours truly, Redbeard, written by Joe Rhodes. Doug Hall edited the tape, and Rick R.J. Lane did the digital mastering. The executive producer of In the Studio is Stephen R. Smith. This week in the studio, we've got the 20th anniversary of something, not just anything.
Till I saw the light in your eyes.
I always considered myself an album artist, that my concepts essentially were album-oriented. And by the time I got to Something Anything, it was all of the concepts, I suppose, were I'm a songwriter.
Hello, it's me.
Hi, this is Todd Rundgren in the studio for Something Anything.